Today, Rinpoche gave a very clear explanation of the general definition of afflictions and the specific definitions of the 10 afflictions and how they relate to one another.
오야 당아서 될라리 지분진 가도도 말해 지분진 삼바정고 삼바듯이 달라루도 세와 타바드를 라저를 될라 봐 삼바정고들라 타바든 줄롱고송한다 대집이 타니제 대집이 타더라 등하도 군요군의 삼바다 열라준이군의 삼바니제 다 등하도 군요군의 삼바들라 안에 동해 군의 상바다 찬만을 동해 군의 상바들라 안에 가지고래
The Dunya Demi
동해 나바 대지 토마스로 그바 동해 공방을 동해 지에다 초다 송어도 사지 다니바 군요군 상바도 말봐 다니바 군요군 상바도데 라리 지금 사지 둘이 나왔대 사지 둘 세부도 사제도 지치 안는 아주 라리 처분은 나와 대부 말이야.
So when we look at, so again we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and specifically the section dealing with training the mind in the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. So looking at the major outline of that section, we find there are 4 categories. First, the mental training. Second category, the measure of the determination to be free. The third category, dispelling misconceptions. And then the fourth category, which is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So the first category, the mental training, we find there's 2 categories. The actual mental training, identifying the mental training has 2 categories: identifying the mind intent on liberation, and then the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. So when we get to the method for developing the mind intent on liberation, we find 2 categories. First, reflection on suffering and its origin, and then reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination. So looking then at reflection on suffering and its origin, we find the 2 categories: reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So when we get to the second then the category reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, there are 2 categories. First, showing the significance of Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering is the first of the 4 truths, and then the actual meditation on suffering. The actual meditation on suffering has 2 categories: reflection on the universal suffering of cyclic existence, and then reflection on the specific sufferings of cyclic existence. And with that universal suffering, we found the suffering of 3, the 8 types of suffering, the 6 types of suffering, and the 3 types of suffering. So then when we finished the section on the specific sufferings, and now we've arrived at reflection on suffering, the shuguga kabiyare.
다오데 사지지나오데 니바 군유군에서 사지도루지 하는 아주 라리 처분 주는 거래. 니바 군유 그 요래상 발라 송레도 녀무지 주 레소주 쳐보아 저월렘주 아니 녀모베 온게 녀모바지 지주 대용거 레사는 코알 그네 저와는 쳐보아 어디 송도송 녀모바지 주 레소비주 쳐보아 저월렘주 송지 다 너무 녀모바지 주들라 녀모 가서 제다 지진바 되네 녀모비 주 녀모비 녀미 어디제ren도 지마르바 녀모비 녀미 지지 다 너무 녀모바 Nyomo Takarasure. Nyomo Bongos what Katu the Marveta, Nyomo Bongos Katu the Tene what the Anyomoshi Teni, Nyomo Shirak Teni, Kani Leo Marva, she Teni, the Suzy Teni. What in my what in Suzy J. Tanyomoshi Teni, Tanyomo Teni to Marveroa, Nyomo Teni J. Senju Majo Shiliji Senju Nyomo Teni Res. Ta suju sanye katu tel ta nyomo chu she ndo chu de cha je kondu je nga je mariba je tazon tenga ta mi nyomo badres ta den tama ji ta 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 tene ta chu je chu ji da du chu lo ta nga bu de tawa ki nyomo badres ju sen karasana ta na la ten che de nyomo to so lo de tawa Nyomoju non tamangate, tawangate is it? And tamatami draw. Yeah.
So we'll look at page 298 in the English. So if everybody wants to turn to that. And we're going to begin at the section on reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. The Shuku Nicha Garden.
Lari Chibuto, what the Pei Nija Sonju Sunire, Tolia Jibatare, Niba Kunjun Gunisambas.
The Nyomo be Jitsu, the Ewaji Chenrezig Lapsang. Not the Chuk, not the
Nyomo the Kasagure. Tatayu Saji
Nyomo be Jitsu, the Ewaji Lapsang.
Nyomo Bajitu, the Lesu Bisu, Chibo, the Joalem Suji Marba.
Okay.
Sonje,
okay, Dixon.
Tambula Jerije. Nyomo Gozwa.
Lesso, then the
Tataji Ziba. Nyomo Biju, Nyomo Binemi, Jerendua.
Lesso.
Nyomo Jesudla.
Lesso.
Saji Jedua.
Lesso.
Yeah.
Okay. So we begin on page 298, reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So it's divided into three categories. First, how the afflictions arise, how you thereby accumulate karma, and then how you die and are reborn. So the first category, how the afflictions arise, we find that there will be 4 points that are made: the identification of the afflictions, the order in which they arise, the causes of the afflictions, and then the faults of the afflictions. So that first category, identifying the afflictions, begins with Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge, and we find the general definition of affliction. And then we get into specific definitions of the 10 afflictions. And when we look at the 10 afflictions, we find that 5 of them are views and 5 of them are non-view. So we begin with the general definition of affliction, and it states an affliction is defined as a phenomenon that when it arises is disturbing in character, and that through arising disturbs the mind stream. So this is a mental factor, and it's that which disturbs the mind stream when it occurs. And then we get into the specific definitions, and those specific definitions begin with the first 5 that are non-view, and that's attachment, hostility, pride, ignorance, and doubt. And then the next 5 are all view. The reifying view of the perishing aggregates, an extremist view, a belief in the supremacy of wrong views, a belief in the supremacy of ethics and religious discipline, and then wrong view, making for the 5 more that are actual view, making for a total of 10 definitions, individual definitions of afflictions. Dixon.
So we're going to now look at
the Chenmo and read it.
Nyomo ba ji chu le su bi chu ti chibo ta jiwa le chu song ji ta dombo nyomo ba ji su de marba dombo la tane ane danjia ji sa ji song ji marba nyomo ba ji su de le ane ko andu bi ju de la le da nyomo ba ni yoris le da nyomo ba ni na na zu nyomo res ane nyomo me na le yo ba yin ya ko jiwa len to mares ta jumba sule ko be le mo bi ware de ko al che to mare kares na ne leji ji nyomo pon sa res wa de zu nyomo yu ju sen de res mare ba ta wa de ne ko andu bi ju zu de nyomo yin ta nyomo pon ko nyomo pon la ne ba te ba ke che bare nyomo la ke ba je ures sa je ne ba je anne somba de lo wa te nyomo ngo zo wa te le 사지 젠도 될해도와
Sumbogare
Sumba 다녀 먹어서 말이야 당연히 담보 바로 제도 말이야 네바 군용 그 전에 상발라 송 녀모 바지 주 대레수비 주 치보 좋아하는 출로 송지 다 담보 어때 아니 녀모 바지 수도 말이야 녀모 바지 수도 다 담보들 해거도와 코안루비 조 레다 녀모바 니 외장 녀모주 인데 녀모메나 마사지레 장렌데바 외장 레당 살라소바 메비 사변지 녀고몬도바 진도 레라 현지시제 메비 등에 진녀고 mondubi sharis shatang nyamu yuena lengha saba me jang tamata tu le sa ne ku pombo lambi sharos what about marba ana wol khud nande long jang de marba nande long jang ro ta na su song du san chama nande long du sebi sel na gi le je phanu mai Sibas no koa sansa marbe sibi ne sile sibi deja bomba ina sibi ku nyomo bomba sibi deja bomba ina sibi sile nagi ane dajumbi jula koa penje le mo yo de koa penje go mares laji je sejoros laji nyomo ba sebeze deja ponsin bezer ne wode sebisher shedans siba yunas nyomo yuna layan jonjoros nyomo de ba ina lenghasa menaya satu lesane kol kuyungres sheson bi sheros wode di sher wode ba do tamut sanjaji saje tamut re
yeah the kangas sebudu
yeah
tuchena. Okay, so we have reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. The origin of cyclic existence is explained in three parts: how the afflictions arise, how you thereby accumulate karma, and then how you die and are reborn. So the first category, how the afflictions arise, Jayan Sheva states that there are three categories. The first category is that the afflictions are the root of cyclic existence because they are necessary in order for one to take birth in cyclic existence. So what that means is it's necessary to have karma and afflictions in order to have a rebirth in cyclic existence. But the afflictions are primary because they serve as the cooperating condition that allows for the arisal of a rebirth in cyclic existence. So if they are not present, it's not possible to have a rebirth in cyclic existence. And we find the case of an arhat who in many previous lifetimes accumulated non-virtuous seeds, accumulated the propelling karma to be born into cyclic existence. But they no longer have afflictions, they no longer have attachment. So therefore, because the cooperating condition isn't present, there can't be the arisal of cyclic existence. And that cooperating condition is the affliction. So the foe destroyer lacks those conditions, which are the afflictions, and therefore he or she can't be born into cyclic existence, even though they still have the karma, they still have that throwing karma for a rebirth in cyclic existence, but that cooperating condition is not there. So the first category in Jayan Sheba's outline is that the afflictions are the primary when it comes to the creation of cyclic existence, or the causes for cyclic existence. That's the first category. The second category is that one needs to abandon these afflictions. So it's necessary to apply some sort of an antidote and abandon these afflictions. And then a third category is the full understanding of the afflictions. So let's read now the part that Jayan Sheba states is the first category. How the afflictions arise. Karma and the afflictions are both necessary as causes for the creation of cyclic existence, but the afflictions are primary. For just as a seed without moisture, soil, etc. will not produce a sprout, so in the absence of the afflictions, even though you have accumulated immeasurable karma in the past, there will be no sprout of suffering because the karma lacks the necessary cooperating conditions. Further reason afflictions are primary. Even without previously accumulated karma, if afflictions are present, you will immediately accumulate new karma and will thereby appropriate aggregates in the future. Similarly, Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition says, so this is a quote from Dharmakirti's Pramavartika Karika, and it states, the karma of one who has transcended craving for existence lacks the potency to project another birth, because its cooperating conditions are gone. So here in the case of the foe destroyer, here existence is referring to cyclic existence, and foe destroyer no longer has attachment, no longer has craving. Therefore, the cooperating condition isn't present, so therefore the karma that he or she has lacks the potency to project another rebirth, and that potency isn't present because the afflictions aren't there which serve as the cooperating conditions. And then it says, and also because the aggregates will arise again if you have craving. So if you have not abandoned attachment, then you will necessarily accumulate a new karma and then take on a birth. So if you have those afflictions still present, you will necessarily accumulate new karma, and therefore you will necessarily have rebirth into cyclic existence, because the aggregates will rise again. This refers to one will have a rebirth in cyclic existence again if those afflictions are present. So that's where we stopped. Okay, Diksun Rinpoche.
Yeah. What the judge about teacher, you will be never Kichala. They are Nemuba, Shibala Ralebe, Numubala Kibasha, the Nipatre, Niba, the antidotes at the use on it. That's no but Numuba Mozum at the La, Numu, Chetaji, and by Numubi, Numubi naming, Je, what the suggested Chibarendua. Yeah.
So the second category is the need to abandon the afflictions. So it says, consequently, it is very important to rely on a remedy for the afflictions. So that's the second category, the need to apply some sort of an antidote. And then the third category is one needs to understand the afflictions, or an understanding of the afflictions. Moreover, since this requires understanding the afflictions, you should become knowledgeable about the afflictions. There are 4 parts to this: identifying the afflictions, the order in which they arise, the causes of the afflictions, and the faults of the afflictions. Diksun.
Nyomoshi Senyi de what the Susundus and what the Sanga Kundulus and Sadanga Dunani and Dunani do what Kundu in the Marbe, Kundulus on those that Nyomobi Senyi ne Kunle Dule Chugan Yuana Rodo Maji Senyi to Junde Teshon Yu Senji Jurodo Maji Wanjua. Te nyomobi Chenji Doshi, Chenji Dos, what the Sangagote, Sanju Rodo Majoshi, Shilij, Sanju Dote, Nyamuk Chenji in Songdus, what Mariba.
So we begin then with the first among the four, identifying the afflictions. And here we find a quote from Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge. Asanga wrote the 5 treatises on the levels, and then the 2 compendiums. So this is one among those 2 compendiums. And here we find the general definition again of the afflictions. It says, Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge gives a general definition of an affliction. An affliction is defined as a phenomena that when it arises disturbing in character, and that through arising disturbs the mind stream. So this is the definition according to Asanga's Compendium of Knowledge. Diksum.
다시 송바 따라 지르면 저들 세신하고도와 강제바나 세주로도 마저와 쉐바 오스녀 무슨 게다 녀무도 줄 제들에 세주로도 마저와 쉐비 셀레제 세주고들 질라 자고레 손사레.
And then Lama Tsongkhapa gives a small clarification to the quote, and it says, thus when it is produced it disturbs the mind stream. So a little more clarification of what Asanga's definition means by the affliction being disturbing to the mind stream itself. That's the disturbing in character is what it refers to.
다 소수 전이라 떠가다 다명은 소수소수 전이 되샤 전이 공도 전이 소수수 전이 시원사래 소수 전이라 녀모질레 줄레 담아 되샤 전이 시원도 맞아.
Now we get into the individual definitions, the specific definitions of the 10 afflictions, and we get the definitions of the 5 viewless afflictions, and then the definitions of the 5 afflictions that are view. And then we begin with the viewless, with attachment, hostility, pride, etc.
She mobile attended the Sacho yours. She mobile combat down, Monta down, Saya Toya down, what to attend the Sachi de Marbe. Shans Nagging over 2 saw the way injury. Nagging over 2 saw the wall attendant, and the Sachi and then Nagi you, Duba Yidon mean, Jesus Chabates. Duba Yidwala just Chabate, Panarella, no Shuba Yunkawa Jinto, they are Raki, Meba Shenji Chibane, Meba Tatan Telka was what is about in the Jackson.
So we begin with the definition of attachment. Attachment means noticing a pleasant or attractive external or internal object and desiring it. So it could be a car, it could be a house, it could be something that you drink, it could be something that you eat. So it says, when attachment clings to its object and grows stronger, it is hard to tear yourself away from the object, just as it is difficult to remove oil which has been soaked into a cloth.
다시 나고버스나 되는 간사르잖아 비신 디가유 소와도와 주 이제 소와도와 도와를 된 되사제도 거로 안에 나고버는 간사르면 되사죠요로 어들스서도 말와 샤나기 고버 이동와 안는 되사고 대유 간라미비 이동와 통화를 된 되사제그레스 Dosha Jigris, Duba Yoba Main, Dosha Yoba Kalanjuru, Madu Yoba Main, Shedan Yoba Kalanjus, what they you Duba Tomat Mena, Dosha Chigamaris, you Maduba Tomat Mena, Kuntu Chigamaris, and the Kazongasu Duba say you don't sit in TV, and you don't want to you what she lives in Sajon Telegilla, and your Moja Gurus in the Jamarba. You don't want to you Lola. Dosha Chaba Yomares, he the more to Lola, Dosha Chaba Yomare, he don't want the more yours, Yoda, and the Sajik Tungres. Sajik, he don't want Tungre, he don't want Tungre, he don't want more Jitu Bezer. Pyoba Kangal Sanjay Tungurota. What is that? The Chas you don't want selling David. The Chai in the Lulu shame Chas, what the logo.
The Tama Yanja Surlang, Ducha in a Lulu She Micha.
The Chai in the Lulu shame Chas.
Okay.
You don't want to look in Basanji, the Chai Serimua. You don't want to look in Basanji, the Jaju Maris. You don't want selling David. And then to she legends room.
Okay.
And what in the Jaguman
Less so. So attachment occurs when there is an attractive object. So we find in Nagarjuna's root wisdom text where it states that if there isn't the desirous or that which is desired, then there can't be attachment. And if there isn't that which is non-desirous or not to be desired, then there can't be anger or aversion. So there needs to be this pleasant or attractive or desirous object in order for the arisal of attachment to take place. So it doesn't mean that if there is this desirous object that there is necessarily this automatic attachment that will take place. This is so it's necessary for there to be a person involved for attachment taking place or a being, but there also it has to be a being that hasn't abandoned the afflictions. So for instance, the Buddha sees something which is desirous, the Buddha sees something which is non-desirous. Why can he or she see these things? Because they are established bases, because they are existence. So because they are existence, they are able to be cognized by the Buddha, because the Buddha cognizes all phenomenon, because they are phenomenon. They are objects which the Buddha sees. But the Buddha doesn't have the attachment, doesn't have the afflictions. So therefore, the desirous object doesn't cause this attachment to take place. So if there is desirous object cognized, there isn't necessarily attachment, but in the case of a being where the afflictions are present, then there becomes this attachment. And the attachment itself is a wrong view or a mistaken consciousness. So because it is a mistaken consciousness, it isn't something that happens when the Buddha sees this desirous object, because the Buddha does not have mistaken cognition or mistaken views. And one more thing about attachment, Rinpoche said attachment is when we see something that is attractive, we have this happy feeling and desire it. Diksum.
What that the Nyamula Sanju, which San Gano, Tomba Dembi, and there was Sanju, which are no rest of Marba. Ram could them send on Tomba Demba, Sanju Seni. Sanju, what the Nyamuk Sanju is on Sanju in the Ram could them be sent on Tomba Demba in Beja. Sent on Tomba Demba, Sanju to what the Sanju Seni Marba, Sanju Rova.
The Sem gets any drawer.
That's handle Rang Kudu Sanju to Tomba Demba Seni. Rang Kudu Sanju you can get Navashiva the San Logres. That's handle Mig Navashiva, Nai Navashiva, Hai Navashiva, G Navashiva, Luigi Navashiva, Iji Navashiva, Truma to your Marwa. That Truma to me do that you move the Sanju in now. And the same drug on the card, Kanda Tomba Demaja Kursana, Yamun Tomba Densaki, Naba Sheba de Iji Sheba Matuyama, Iji Sheba, Yamuina, Iji Sheba in Chow. Onjil Yamuyo Mares, Yamu in the Iji Sheba in Chadu, Yamu Kanda Tomba Debi, Iji Naba Sheba de Iji Naba Sheba, Iji Naba Sheba Tomba Demaja Kures.
Okay, so Afflictions are necessarily mental factors, and those are different from mind. So when we look at what mind is, we divide mind into 6 different types of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, tactile consciousness, and the mental consciousness. So there's 6 categories of mind. And if it is affliction, it is necessarily within the mental consciousness. So the physical consciousness is we don't find this affliction. We find this affliction within the mental consciousness. So when we define mind and mental factor, mind is defined as that which has a similarity with the mental factors that arise as its accompaniers. So the mental factors accompany these minds. And then the definition of a mental factor is that which has a similarity with the mind that has it as its accompanier. So it's basically like the mind is accompanied by the mental factor, and the mental factor is accompanied by the mind, and there's a similarity there. So that's the definition that we find for those two. But specifically, if it's an affliction, it's a mental factor, and it doesn't fall under mind itself, but it occurs in the mental consciousness. So when we look at the mind that accompanies it, it's a mental consciousness that accompanies it, not a physical consciousness.
Kunalu Siri Ramana Muyasare, Mutan, Pame, Lelotan, Madebada Mutango, Nyamujela Tat Jones, Nyamu Nabasheva, Jig Koto, Sanju Vajangatu Yungo, Muta Moba, Nyamubi Nabasheva Yina, Koto Tone, Muba Yubichao, Mutan, Pame Yubichao, Mutan Pame, Lelu Yubichao, Mutan Pame Lelotan, Madeba Yubichao. Madebadang, Moba Yubicha, Modang, Madebadang, Modang, Goba. What the Yamuji said on some of the Sanju Piche, Druzi Regumde, Moda Pame, Ludan, Madebadang, Modang, Yamujan Latat Jones.
The Nyomon, the Nishu.
Nyomobi Nabasheva Juro, Nyomobi Nabasheva Sonden Suyu, and the Sanju Piche Natujimude, Modang, Pame, Leludan. Madeba Mudan, Gu, Sanju Chudo Chu. What Yamuji saying, could the Sodeg, Sanju Chudio Chaos. Mudan, Pame, Leludan, Madeba Mudan, Gu, Yamujan Latatu, Yamujan Nabashivi, could do that to your artists.
Mudang Pame, Dang
Madeba, Leludan, Madeba the Mudan, Yamujan Latatu.
Mu Gupa, Mu Gupa, Madapa, Matepa, Lelo, Pamepa, Jingepa. You might have
what the Sude, what the Islu, what the
Nishu, the Mambo Yure.
What the Mudan Pamela Lutan, Mudan Pamela Lutan, and Madeba Mudan, Sanju Jedan Nishu. What the Yamuji said on some of them, Sanju Gazio, what the letter with the Mobaji, Pamebaji, Leluji, Madebaji, Mudan. Mudan good.
Okay. So the mind itself is like the mirror, and that it's not nor it's more like a lens. I think when Rinpoche is saying glass, he's using the word for mirror, but it's almost like a lens that cognizes this, and then the mental factors clarify the experience, or they are the experiencer part of the mind itself. So the mind the mental consciousness apprehends, and then the mental factors accompany it and then discriminate the experience, if you will, the feeling and so forth. And it's stated that when an affliction arises, there are necessarily other secondary afflictions that are present, such as lethargy, excitement, non-faith, laziness, and laziness. These accompany the affliction when it arises. The nga dru katse du Rinpoche. Nga
Montant pa me le temps songe.
le
Made padan montant que trudo tru.
ngupa
Made padan montant que nous la tatu jonsa.
mu sena
Nous naba sheba. Nous bi naba sheba. Nous naba sheba kodo oto sanyu trudo yongre zita.
mupa gupa matepa lelo pa mepa. Then drupa gare.
Montant pa me le temps songe. Made padan montant que barelo.
Mu sena
Mon baro.
mopa you're mopa gupa matepa lelo pa mepa. Chik yomare. Mopa gupa
Montant pa me le temps songe.
mu tang
Made padan
da de
montant que ni do mo ba ni do.
mupa ni
Gol mo ba ji hotel mo ba te kha yire.
There's Rinpoche is saying there's 6 and there's a different type of lethargy. There's 2 types of lethargy. So it's lethargy, excitement, non-faith, laziness, non-conscientiousness, and then another type of lethargy. And I don't see it within this 20 secondary afflictions. Oh, here, ngutsamepa? When you say
Musa me ba da yin ba.
Yomare, okay. Mupa, gupa, matepa, lelo, pa mepa, then drupa.
Montant pa me le temps. Made padan montant que ba.
Yeah, so there's another word, I don't see it within this mu. It's like lethargy. So these are accompanying the affliction. Accompaniers to the affliction.
O te ta o te ne ta nyu mo ton wa shil me da chaba kare sna ma so yin me ji ge wa te yin sna o shi ta mo so nyu mo ton wa shi ge wa yin so do a
We understand that?
o bi sheba da yi ji sheba ni ro sheba o shi da shi ni o shi de ne me gi sheba na yi sheba na yi sheba chi sheba le sheba nga don wa shi mar ba o shi o te sul nyu mo yo mares
Less so.
Nyamu ina ishim chan gres. Ten zozan wanshi da nyamu ni ke wares.
Less so.
Iji sheba da nyamu le. Iji sheba da nyamu le ta mosmore no marbe. Nyamu ina iji sheba im cha. Iji sheba nyamu im ma cha.
Less so.
Jeba sama ju jin de marbe.
Less so. Musun. Nyomo dan nichi sheba. The ni nyomo dan nichi sheba.
Nyamu da iji sheba mosmore de to.
Okay.
Nyamu ina iji sheba im cha. Iji sheba nyamu im cha ko maro.
Less so.
Shanchu sen da tu.
Less so. So when we look at the 2 categories of consciousness, sense consciousness and mental consciousness, afflictions fall categorically under the mental consciousness. They don't fall under sense consciousness. Afflictions and sense consciousness are mutually exclusive. They're contradictory. There's no common locus. So when we compare, though, the afflictions with mental consciousness, we'll find that there are 3 permutations. If it is an affliction, it is a mental consciousness, but if it is a mental consciousness, it is not necessarily an affliction. And if you were to say, posit that, which is not an affliction but a mental consciousness, you could say the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or bodhicitta. So we find that there are 3 permutations there. And just to go back, I'm reading another way this is explained. It says lethargy has the function of assisting all root and secondary afflictions. So that's what is meant. It assists the afflictions. So those 6 that were mentioned assist the afflictions. And at the break, I'll look to see if within these 20, there's a description of a 6th one that accompanies it, just to find out what that missing word is, if it's in here or not. So there are 6 that accompany and assist the afflictions. Dixon.
Sentient Natan, sentient lemon contribute by yours, sentient Natan, and the sentient Dan sentient Moduba Tone, then contribute. Sentient Natan, Dungela then contributes, Chanchala then contributes, Samala Suba, Dunge, Nena Lamine, and what the Dunge Duncan, what the Nena Lamine, contributes. Mene Gune Nasambas, Gune Nasamba Yunguris, Nasambas Karsana, Saint Domoris, Hanyabo Maris, Udala Neba Shaw Samba, Udala Neba Shanduki, Shelejin Saint Wotanjil, Control Grace, Marba.
So now we get to hostility or anger. It means observing origins of suffering, such as living beings' pain, weapons, or thorns, and giving rise to a harsh, tormented mind that contemplates harming these objects. So this is cognizing the non-desirous, that which is not attractive. And then it gives these examples of living beings, pain, weapons, and thorns. And then one's mind wishes to harm those objects in some way that are found not to be non-desirous, that then one has aversion or anger towards. Dixon.
Control Shadon launch, the moon launch, or the Jado, or the Sukanak Jagaris. The child launch again, the chat and the Yomo me. Control launch, control the Yomo me. The moon launch, the water. The child launch, the hang, the child launch, the moon launch, and Shadon launches your water.
Oh,
the child long to show
long. That's so. Jula.
The child long to show us.
Ale.
The child long to wear Mahakumaro, then the child long to show. Control long to show. Or the control de Hagi, long to Rusia, the child Hagi, Halangi, Rusia, Tomung Halang Rusia, what the Mobisia Vedro, what the Sundakatul Pakande and water.
But then a doubt arises because we have within the tantric vehicle the arisal of using anger as path, and attachment as path, and ignorance as path. So does that mean that the path that's arising is an affliction? So this is just something we need to think about. We find in the tantric vehicle this using anger as path, attachment as path, ignorance as path.
What the
So here's something that makes a doubt arise.
That's what Gaje Gaje Nijita la tentes, Gaje de Kujita in Jita la tente, Shanagi, Tometans, she Zange, Nagi Zange, and Tomato Zange la mine, Sankimba. She tomato Nagi Tomato, she Zange, the Nagi Zange la mine, Sankimbi Nabajenji, she lives in Sanju Duate, Najak Tenides, two Nabi Jubavos, what the Tangazo Zebi is Shibuchiki, and what the Zuzebi, Yudenchibi is, what the Lamine. And what the Naje was Naje. Naje do not go so much what the Joka to the young Mabala mean and Naje George somewhere.
Nabala meets it.
Remember, Nali Joe Mess and Bachi, Naje.
Less so. So then number 3 is pride. Pride means observing either internally or externally qualities that are high, low, good, or bad, and based on the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, allowing your mind to become inflated, you assume an aspect of superiority. So these are internal or external qualities. So you might say, oh, I have so beautiful, and then have pride. Or I have these excellent qualities. I'm an excellent person. And this would be, so you have this thought, and then your mind becomes inflated, becomes blown up, and then this pride occurs. But it's not only when one is thinking of these excellent qualities or beauty, it's also saying, I'm the lowest person, I'm the poorest person, and then inflating your mind in that way as well, thinking that one is the worst. So this becomes pride also. So you assume an aspect of superiority, but it would also be I'm superiorly bad. And so it's using that word superior, but next to a negative quality. So I'm the worst. So I think that would be the best translation. I'm the worst. Would also be pride.
다 상지 구주고 대변 희지쟁고 만난 동동제 세버스 자주 저진을 총방가자 요지로 총방가자 비즈니스 나자체 다 만난 동동제 동근에 총방가자 세네 안잘라건 구제고 상바요 말다 안 대변 희지고 나도고 만난 동동 세버스 만난 동동
맞아.
그만한 또 맞아세가 이나 kunyawan도 다 주되는 용구지로 대변 해주쟁게 그냥 고세자바이나 무지세비 디바마도 용구 말해선 어디 통브레스 통든 대변 만한 동동전들 할지버레스 할지송레스
맞아.
안노 고샤주 생각을 할랜데는 이로다
맞아.
총방가자 사지가자 차버레스 된도 샤바는도 원도 샤바 수트라 샤
And we also find the story of a Buddha previously when he was a riverboat captain, and he was on board with 500 business people, and he saw through his abilities that there was someone on board named Mina Duntun, that was going, and this is it basically means a black person carrying a spear, the name. So it's a black person carrying a spear. So it's just a description of the person carrying a spear. So that's who this is. And the Buddha realized, he wasn't Buddha yet, it was in his previous life, that this person was going to kill all of the people on board and steal their things, and out of his compassion actually killed the person who was going to kill all of the people on the riverboat. So how is this compassionate? It's compassionate because he recognized that these people would all lose their lives, and secondly, that he would commit the misdeed of killing all of them and would have to have a hell realm rebirth. So by realizing, the Buddha realized that by killing him he would abstain from this terrible act and not have to experience those consequences. So the Buddha killed him, everyone was saved, and then he was born as a god instead of having the karma of being born in the lower realms, and then was able to become a bodhisattva in that, become later, very quickly later, become a bodhisattva. So he became a god and then very quickly later became a bodhisattva. So we have these occurrences where we have this is actually compassion, where there is this harming, that's seeming harm that's taking place. So we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
루메시유 네 메시비 요모제 노사 아도 마리바스 간데 denjitan, lenjitan, ne konchutu su santan de ngasu shegmudo meshebajungo o meshebi shele jenjunde o de maribares mariba.
So number 4 is ignorance, means possessing the affliction of misunderstanding on account of a mind that is unclear about the nature of the 4 truths, karma and its effects, and the 3 jewels. So there's a lack of clarity, a lack of truth in one's mind related to the 4 truths, the karma and its results, and the 3 jewels. So that's what ignorance is.
That danger meshibat lende meshibat chu jirwa. Ti yun ju de kar ju sho sana ka jasar da.
Ju
Yudel na yun ju zo yus. Yu shibat yudel 나유스 인주유스 ane miyu 나유 인주유스 어떤데 말이야
Lorig.
ane 다 로리 놀려 들어 로리 놀래 조지 미식 인주유 조선 조도 말이야 조로와 조지 미식 인주유 조지 미식 조도 조로 너차 인주유 조선나 이 동원 주고 말이야 그 인주유를 들어 콘도 인주유 조선나 이 동원 주고 말이야 tam mesheba de juyu de karin sare konju meshebe maribata lende meshebe maribata ane od meshebe maribata de juyu shosana te tubandu ta hote santareja.
So then another doubt might arise, because when we look at the object that brings about the arisal of others' afflictions, we find attachment is a desirous object or an attractive object, and hostility, the object is the observed object is something non-desirous. So what is the observed object of ignorance? Is it the 3 jewels? Is it 4 noble truths? Is it karma and its results? So then we have to think about what is that observed object. It's an absence of an understanding of these things. So what is the observed object for ignorance? What is ignorant? You know, that's the question Rinpoche is raising.
What that then dosha launch shidang launch timu launch sonja kdo ngaje launch tanjita launch tan ayu muse.
So then there is a way to use attachment as a path, and anger as a path, and ignorance as a path. But can you use pride as a path? So can you use pride as a path? Can you use doubt as a path? Is there a path of doubt? So are all 10 afflictions? Can all 10 afflictions be path? So this is something that scholars look over. So you look at this, and maybe you have some kind of doubt when you look at the words in these pages. So it makes us arise some kind of uncertainty about it or doubt about it.
What the Basu said, what Dampa so soon, Dampa Gonsorata, Sudan, Lendetan, Gonchunia wouldn't do it. Dampa so sons, Dampa so sons and sons Jaurota, Dampa Jija Sarwa, Tani Shosana, Gonchut and Lendin in the Redja. Basu Jason.
So Demba
and Danga about to conjure about to go and draw.
The Demba Ji.
Demba su son serva, tenole lende tan kunchu nyen duares demba su son sana demba je ne lende je kunchu son la mine what the tazon chengores da
Less so. So number 5 says doubt means considering those three, the four truths, karma and its effects, and three jewels, and being uncertain whether they exist or are real. So doubt, Basuchuji Jetson says, is being doubtful of truth, being doubtful of karma and its results, being doubtful of the three jewels. So having doubt with regards to these. Let's something up here. 234.
What done the Shao Kondru Ji Naje Ji Mariba Tazon Jitsa Ji Tanji Daro Jita Tanji Dado Jisula Tawane Nyale Pombola Mine Nyale Pombola Mine Ngatan Ngashi Datan Dag Tayu Shiro Nyumujen Nosa Tanji Tawa Denjita Jisula Tawa ne Nyale Pombo Senanga Suji Pombo Chu Pombo Diji Pombo Tuzumarbe Ku Zuji Pombo La Soba Pombo Nola Mine Ngata Ngayes Ne Ngai Laba Ngai Kamba Ngai Karas what the Kar Ngai Kamba Ngai Laba Ngai what the Lamine what the Karsugure Ngai she datan dagatayu shironyomujin what the jitares tajita.
So going back to number 4, doubt, I just went back and looked at the Tibetan, and the reason for the explanation that was just given, where Rinpoche said that doubt is being uncertain about the four truths, karma, its effects, and the three jewels, is because it says in the Tibetan, the collection of truths, the three, it doesn't really have this explanation of the four and the three jewels and karma. It's not in the Tibetan. So that's why Rinpoche explained what Lama Tsongkhapa is referring to when he says the collection of these, the truths, the three, etc. It'd probably be the best way to translate it. And you can see how, just as a translator's note, encoded the Lamrim Chenmo really is compared to the English translation. Because all it says here is truths, the three truths, etc. And then in the English, we have it written out, the Four Noble Truths, the karma, its effects, and three jewels, but we don't find it in the Tibetan. So then number 6, reifying view of the perishing aggregates is an afflictive intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and regards them as I or mine, that is, as the self or that which belongs to the self. Here, since perishing means impermanent and aggregates is plural, the terms indicate that what are apprehended are simply impermanent and multiple phenomena. There is no permanent and unitary person. This is why it is called the view of the perishing aggregates. So that's number 6. And again, I'm sorry, going back to number 5, that commentary that's basically now in the Lamrim here is by Basuchuji Jetson in that 4 interwoven commentary text.
The
NGK Khensur the Dembaji dans Gonchusun dans Ledre Trison Yene the Buik the Yomare the
Lende dans Nije Gonchusun
Lesser
do the Redja.
Then Yene the Demba Soksum Kona
Demba Jito the Demba Senon Ludo.
Sokserna
Demba Jesana Jirwa. Tene Tasusa Sudan Duba Jugorwa. Te Taman Dua, Denjitan, Lende Tan, Conchus Tamarendua, Ta Ulma Demba Susu said the Tamason de Rendua. Denjitan, Ti Tamatendua, Maribane, Denjitan, Lende Tan, Conchuki, Rangila Min Lumasi, Shironyamujanos, Ta Woodle, Tazon de Demba Sonson said, Demba Dejit, and Niba Lende, Somba Conchu de Rendua. 특종 또 어디 대바당 건축도 렌데수 미네 네 요다메 어디 담아도 거야.
So it connects, Rinpoche is saying the way in the Tibetan that it is it connects number 5 and 4. Number 4, you do have the 4 truths, the 3 jewels, and karma and its results written out. In number 5, you don't. In the text, it just refers back to number 4, but it doesn't write them out again. It just says, considering those 3, but it does say truth, etc. It's just, it means the same thing, but there's just some addition. So Basuchuji Jetson clarifies what this is referring to. Less so.
Talanjiba namatapa tsuba se tumandubares jiba tsuba ne danga matapa wate pomonga tsuba on hembe de kanla mibi jene matapa ta tumi tsuzang inches njisula tawase to teres tajis inje ne taba ta jibi rajin mainos metos jermse tuba jero to kandwa.
That's so. So the reifying view of the perishing aggregates is defined here as an afflictive intelligence that observes the appropriated aggregates and as I or mine, that is, as the self or that which belongs to the self. And then we have an explanation of the term. Here, since perishing means impermanent, and collection and aggregates is plural, so it says aggregates is a collection, is more than one. So it's impermanent and it's a compound. The terms indicate that what are apprehended are simply impermanent and multiple phenomena. There is no permanent and unitary person. This is why it is called the view of the perishing aggregates. So here Lama Tsongkhapa points out that these things are impermanent and simply multiple, but there is no singular unitary person there. So it's negating this incorrect view, basically. Lama Tsongkhapa is basically negating this incorrect view that grasps at I and mine based on the aggregates, observing the aggregates and so forth. So form aggregate and so forth.
Jisula Tawashe Mingitasos, Jisula Tawas Mingitaku Jusenteres, Tabat Chibi Kansa Metoshe, Shebi Cheto, and then Jisula Tawashe Mingitabares.
So Lama Tsongkhapa negates the permanent singular person and states this is why this view is called this. Perishing means impermanent. Aggregates means a compound or plural. So Lama Tsongkhapa not only explains why it is called what it is, but negates its misapprehension, negates the view that is created that sees a singular unitary person based on that grasping, based on that apprehension, misapprehension. Diksun.
Tanjita Tatak Senidendo Tata.
Less so.
Tatabi Tawane, Jidi Ganson, you datus, Jidi Ganson, dat Natmaranga, Jida Ngalmindro, Jidi Ganson, you dat Lamine, Jidi Ganson, you dat Lamine, Taba Tuzubons, Taba Tuzut, Hamang Hamiduna, Shima Shimiduna, and Jack Musiki was relation will cheer. Taba Tabi to them, Hamang Hamidus, Takade, and Tanzing Tawan, Jidi Ganson with that Telamine, Taba Tan, Tuzu the Tower, and Jide Kanson, Nate, Taba in Vatagoris, Taba. And Tuzu Diabatagoris, Tuzu Diosana, Haman you are, Tata you are, Jima you are, Tuzu Taba Tabidu, and Haman Hamidun, Jai Camboyan Sishitos, Leshinibula, Jai Camboyan Sisade, the Jangon Korea into Sum. Leshinibun, Jai Camboyan Sisade. Taba Tabidan, Haman, Tuzu, Takadule, Jai Camboyan Sigi, Shibaris as you had. Jai Camboyan Sigi, Jaris Lawaran, or the Jangon Korea Redisas. That is something Korea,
Korea,
South Korea, North Korea, I don't know. Yeah.
You know, the Jai Kempo.
Jai Cambo, Labaris, Leshin, you are Taba Tabidu. Tuzu said, Haman, Tuta, you ever did, Haman, you are, Tata, you are, Sugar, you are, Taba, you are.
So, Lama Tsongkhapa, in the Essence of Eloquence, what is it? Let me just read this first. So number 7 is an extremist view. An extremist view is an afflictive intelligence that observes the self as apprehended by the view of the perishing aggregates and regards that self either as permanent and eternal or as a subject to annihilation in such a way that there will be no rebirth from this life into a future life. So this is in the Essence of Eloquence, we find a response to someone who's called the Chinese Abbot, but Dalai Lama said is actually Korean, and it's responding to the misunderstanding, or responding to the wrong view that believes that there was always something before, and there is always something now, and there always will be in the future. So this is a misunderstanding that believes in this permanent person. So Lama Tsongkhapa negates this idea in the Essence of Eloquence.
Tanjibito, Jide Ganson, Datala Mine, Nat Marba, Natala Mine, Takwate Tabata, Taba, and Haman you are, Tata you are, what the Shaman Rukumaris, Sanchin Gris, Tabata, Tuzu Bons, then Shema, Tanjo Meba, Chebata, Shero, Yomujan, to what the Tatak Teni is, Marba. That jump in on the low dock, Shen Josh, my mother's. What the jumping it on Rabudu.
So it first shows this misunderstanding that it says apprehended by the view of the perishing aggregates that regards the self. So it regards the I as being permanent, as always being there. So this is one view that's negated. And then the second view that's negated is the nihilist view. And that is that there is no past or future life. And it says, or as subject to annihilation in such a way that there will be no rebirth from this life into a future life. So there's two here that are negated, a permanent self that always is, and a self that is subject to annihilation and that doesn't take on a future rebirth and doesn't have a previous life. And that's, again, the nihilist view.
So the
nihilists believe that it doesn't matter what you do in this life because there isn't a next life. So what you do now doesn't matter. Do whatever you want.
So
this is... So that those who hold that view, that do whatever you would like, this life is the only life, are called the nihilists, and this second point is to negate their philosophical system.
Tawabi Pombola Mine Chudu Zimbi Shironya Mujanos, Tawa chooses again the Wade, Jitaji, Tataji, Lota Sombo the Tawa Chures, Shitawan on the Ajuris, Jije, Tadakan Latene, Jung Yu, Tawabus, 그래서 지다 주된 강사다 타다 주된 강사다 로다 주라 강사 송다 다다 강라 때는 종유 또 버서나 왔던 지다 주려에 강사도 말বে 他的주려에 강사 안에 왔대 로다 주려에 강사도 또 버들더라 또 홍보라 면에 면에 초든 재미 또 홍보도 조주 홍보도 수요 홍보로 소도 정말로 네 추인是야슈인是초든 재미 새로 녀모제 놓어서 왔대 탄진스가 왔던 지야우레스.
So number 8 is a belief in the supremacy of wrong views, is an afflictive intelligence or an afflicted wisdom. It's translated. It's actually a wisdom that possesses afflictions, something like this. Afflicted wisdom. This word possession is in there, though. So an afflictive intelligence that observes one of the three views, the view of the perishing aggregates, an extremist view, and a wrong view, along with a view holder's aggregates on the basis of which such occurs and regards such a view as extreme. So one grasps at his or her aggregates, the form aggregate, and so forth, and then holds one among these three types of views that are incorrect, and then while holding one among those three, believes that one among those three is a supreme view. So that these three, the view of the perishing aggregates is a supreme view. Extremist view is a supreme view. The wrong view is the best view, or the supreme view. This wrong view depends on the other ones to first apprehend and then believe that those that are apprehended are superior views.
다 주진도 두주 존재된 바다 주진도 두주 존재네 치수봉이 주진당스 안에 다 두주세야 두진 바다 차지당 주당 르당 아기 조방 내버시비 두주 당스 간라테네 다다 간라테네 조유 봉벌라미네 디반다바당 녀모벌 주어당 코알레 내번제비 따유 싫어 녀모제도 어때 수지도 두주 존재레스 자 주진 샤가가 주진다 발랑 주진다 어떤 뭐가자는 다 간데 당원시 이렇게 된대요. 뭐시 이렇게 싫어봐. 뭐시 이렇게 되는 게 안에 방아지를 방아도 신에 산다지도 만들지 저것도 공원시 동호회입니다. 뭐시 동들에 오다 방아나지 제고도 다스. 방아나지 제나오데 살치고도 다스. 공원시 방아지 신에 살치고 동호회로.
봐봐. 나마데.
방아
cow. Okay.
겨와시네 살지고 공원시 동호회로다. 공원시 동주다 오데 발랑나지 제긴 살지고도 다스. 발랑 뒤주스 발랑나지 제고레스. 겨와나지 제난 살지고도 다스. 안는 샤가 지게 어떻게 공원시 그다는 샤지 신에 살지야 동호회로. 오데 샤나지 제고도 샤들 고신 날죠 동호회로다. 샤가가 주진다 어디서 도술라미네 주진 추인 다와된 사람
Ale upapa the jardo
오바바도 어떤 오바 가사 오바 지스고 막
the park
어들
the jardo then the cow dang the sha the shati
오바바스나 오바바바
that's
지금 오바바바 그는 어디지 살도 제바인지 제로 안나 그것도 오바나지 제우가레스 날 제그래서 어디 수인사데 도술라미네 추든 세원
self-do two channel So number 9 is a belief in the supremacy of ethics and religious discipline. Is an afflictive intelligence which observes an ethical discipline that renounces faulty ethical discipline, or a religious discipline which requires certain forms of dress, manner, speech, and physical behavior, as well as the mental and physical aggregates on the basis of which these forms of ethics and asceticism occur, and regards them of cleansing you of sin, freeing you from afflictions, and removing you from cyclic existence. So there's many different forms of this, and there's a story of someone who had a yogi or a being had clairvoyance and was able to see that the cow in its next life was going to be a god, so then the palang, then the garicheson, the shewa shema hla
Kiwa Shinel Halchiba Tongoro, Tondu Wata Balana Jewundos, Kiwana Jagina Halchagadudas,
Dang Sunsan,
Palan Halchagu Kotonro, Palan Najana Halchagadas, and the most Balana Jew.
Oh, okay. So this person had clairvoyance and saw that this cow was going to be born as a god. So told everyone, if we act as this cow does, and we engage in this type of behavior, then we will be reborn as a god. And then there's other stories of the shati, and also the owl. Those followers of the owl that saw that, and similarly, this owl would, in the future life, be reborn as a god. So therefore, they all put on an owl's skin. And they wore it while they meditated, because they believed that if they acted as this owl, then they would be able to have this God's realm rebirth. So these are some examples of forms of religious practice that one believes will result in something that it just will not. So therefore it's a wrong view, because it doesn't, what one believes will happen doesn't. So it's mistaken. So that's what number 9 is referring to. So we find in the in the Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, where it says that people are like ants. If one starts to go, then the rest of them follow and do what that first ant does. So this is what is meant by this number 9, this following these practices that are wrong. By following.
Yeah.
The Dixon. Luta.
Lobatawa Chobatro, Lobatawa ne, Sanghajitan, Le Jundusu Meji, Kubante Batants, Kundigluta. On shoot dans tout la soba, Nendu, Junzimbi, Dundugluta, Shironyamujanos, Lota de la Kundigluta dans Dundugluta Niores, Lobatawane, Chawang Hashitan, Lendesu Mebatawa to Kundigluta res, and then on shoot and Jun, Shitu, and on shoot Jun, and Hindu Sumar Hindu Anshu Rujures, Shizu Nendu Second Tanchemba. Ne Anshu Tan, Su Ru Junzimbi, Shironyamujan Water, Drundu Luta. That Luta Chinese shows, na? What the 다 rundu 다 kundiglu 다 니가 잡은 잡은도와
루타이와 니가래
측하셨다 레레수 매지 고반대바던 kundiglu다 원수도 주라 소바 류 준진비 실현녀무진 rundu글루다 말을 rundu글루다 원수 류주에서도 여바다도 그러 말이야. 렌데 매 조항하시 매 군주 매송도 군대로다. 여바다게도 원수 류주인 봤다. 네. 시도 류주다와데
So number 10 is wrong view, is an afflictive intelligence that denies the existence of things such as past and future lives or karma and its effects, or believes that the cause of living beings is a divine creator or a primal essence. So these two are two types of wrong view. Wrong view that denies the existence of things such as past and future lives or karma and its effects, and then the other which believes that living beings are caused by a divine creator. So this is to negate some of the Hindu views and other views where there's a divine creator, and then or a primal essence. And this is to negate the Samkhya school's view, the enumerator's view that there is some sort of primordial ooze that creates the I, or the being. So this is number 10. Number 10.
Tadra tabanzi tanzi da jong hashi odi databanzi tanzi to suluta ayimi tansu na pechi insu gujiro a databanzi tanzi denzi chuno deba tubanzi denzi oto suluta ayimi tansu na luta insu guzamarba.
So then we ask then, based on this, is the grasping at the I as being truly established then wrong view? Because texts say that it is wrong view. So that's the question. It doesn't say this grasping in here. So Rinpoche is just asking.
Runduglo tani duani marba ta nyomo chobunde da ne kunju da ne ju shebi sa da phumnga ira yele sheba tar jongwa tar sheba os ta ode ne nyomo jode susondu sana sangage kunju da ne ju shebi sa le sondus phumnga ira jede ini kre lebe ini da 네 상각이 군주 단내주 셰비 살려서 송바 나진 지르메진데 제베인스.
So then where do these facts come from? So here it says, I have explained these 10 afflictions in accordance with the compendium of knowledge and levels of yogic deeds, and with Vasubandhu's explanation of the 5 aggregates. So this comes from a Sangha's compendium of knowledge and levels. So we find it the 5 treatises on the levels, and then the 2 compendiums. So one is a compendium, one's a treatise on a level, and then Vasubandhu explanation of the 5 aggregates.
So
is the subject attachment wrong view? Is anger wrong view? So then you have doubts occur. So we look at the definitions, and then by these definitions make us debate. Okay.
susun deba ta nas jida ta mariba ni susu insigen ji yoares jida de ne mariba insigen ji deba ni yomata jida ta mariba susun deba ta nas jida ta mariba ni khaga is laba ina ndende jawores puna taba dubala 나바 중제 티바나 더발 타바 자요바 이나 나훈르 대요바 이나 중제 보바나 보데 타비 넬루 마사와나 텔라 드르든제비 루저와타르스 타바 드르든제비로 타바 드르든제로 소포자데 돈도발도와 저와타르 폼비넬루 마세 폼비넬루 세와라 디비 마리베 메발레 폼보다 다도 쳐봤jel라사 폼비넬루 마세와 폼비넬루 마세와 당아주 마리바세드 마리베 덴바던 공주들인데 메셰바 다마자스마 what the Pombi Nelu Mesheba, Maribar Jagadua. Pombi Nelu Sawala Dibi, Maribe Maba the Jushebal Tene, Maba Le, Pombola Datu, Trubachelas, Ne Pombo de what the Datu Trubazelot Chegres, Trubachela, and the Telejomoba Chos, Telejomoba. Jidata Mariba Susan Davasu Tendula Gresta Jidata Mariba Chins Lava Yina Teni Chitun Dona Ne Jita Ni Yomoche Mariba Jita Kun Yomoche Mariba is and tell you what they endeavor to younger sit the double of the small days at back.
So Rinpoche said we'll just begin this section. Number 2. The order in which the afflictions arise. One way to look at this is to consider ignorance as distinct from the view of the perishing aggregates. For example, when twilight falls on a coiled rope, its status as a rope will be unclear, and someone may imagine that it is a snake. Similarly, according to this view, the misapprehension of the aggregates as a self arises due to the darkness of ignorance, which prevents clarity about how the aggregates exist. The other afflictions then develop from this misapprehension. On the other hand, if you hold that ignorance and the view of the perishing aggregates are identical, then the view of the perishing aggregates is itself the root of the afflictions. So we have 2 ways of looking at it. One, seeing that the ignorance prevents this clarity about how things abide, and then causes the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, or you see them as identical, that the ignorance is the reifying view of the perishing aggregates. So these are the 2 ways to look at it. And then it gives the example of the rope and the snake, and how in the example where this misapprehension takes place, ignorance makes you think it's a snake. So that results in the misapprehension. The ignorance results in misapprehension, whereas the second idea is that they're identical.
Jita to Mariba Chitun Debatana Jita Ni Yomoche Maribares Teyan Jide Datu Jide Tene Nga Ramon Truba Datu Zunwana Rajan Susu Jesu Chuba Shelas Jide Nga Onyabe Nga Raja to be Truban Zeban Dakanza Deba Truban Zebaina Ngata Nijen said to Susu Jayumaris, Jube, Juba Shelas, Tejene, Rangi Shula, and then Randa Jen Susu Jen Zedule, and the Rangi Shula Chaba Jangore, Jen Shula Kondu Jangores, Jita, Deja to Hondu Geshe don't see the Mara.
So on the other hand, on the other hand, if you hold that ignorance and the view of the perishing aggregates are identical, then the view of the perishing aggregates is itself the root of the afflictions. When the view of the perishing aggregates apprehends a self, discrimination arises between self and others. So if the ignorance is the view of the perishing aggregates, then this self is apprehended, this self that is apprehended, and then an attachment to this self, the single unitary self, takes place, and then we establish others, and then aversion towards others can take place. So we have this attachment to ourself that arises from this grasping, this perishing view of the aggregates, and then we label other, and then have sometimes aversion towards other.
Jida the Jidun Debatana, Jida Ni Maribares, and what the Jida Ni Maribare, Jida the Jushebalatene, Jidi Dadu Zuana, Rajeni Susu, Jobashela, and then Tejine, Rangishulan Decha Chain Ware, and then Jenshula Sedan Chain Wares, Mine, and Mine, Saint Kibajila Naji Chain Wares. Tenila Tachi to Tatar Marba Tata Jangores, 제 다도 다와 소당 대인지 대당지 쉐방가 바 수리도 중에 저 수리도 도 초등생 바 조사 대진도我的 다가된 지다가 주셔발 때는 너무 죽은 걸로 지다가 주셔발 때는 용대야서 지다를 때는 도사 중으로 공부증 아제제 특종도 지금 도스 what
So this is saying that in dependence upon the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, all of these other 9 afflictions arise, attachment arises, aversion arises, doubt, etc. All these things arise in dependence upon this reifying view of the perishing aggregates. Pride arises. So it says once you've made the distinction, you become attached to what is associated with yourself and hostile towards that which pertains to others. As you observe yourself, your mind also becomes inflated, and you have pride. You develop a belief that this very self is either external or subject to annihilation. This is the extremist view when we look back at the different views. Extremist view. So it's showing how this perishing view, this reifying view of the perishing aggregates causes all of these other views to occur. And you've also come to believe in the supremacy of detrimental practices associated with such views. So the view that holds certain religious practices and and ethics as supreme, ethical discipline and religious practices as supreme.
건조소라 대다 매도냐고 로다 정으로서 로다 쉐베 로다 야나데 뜻답이 여당 매 이나 메냐베 특종제용레스 난데레스 다요 나는 젠두시 지다도요 나 젠두시 다젠 차던지도 너샤도 공주도 제그레스 대다 단지 대다 단의 용제레 냠바 타진 중원조 너차당 어디 내쇼근으로 되기 주시발라 되는 용어레스 셰송베스
Similarly, develop the wrong view that denies the existence of such things as things. Where did I go? Similarly, develop the wrong view that denies the existence of things such as the teacher who taught selflessness and that which he taught, karma and its effects, the 4 truths, the 3 jewels, and so forth. As else you become doubtful as to whether such things exist or are real. So you develop these wrong views, and the view of supremacy of ethical discipline and religious, of ethics and religious discipline, and you have a belief in the supremacy of wrong views, an extremist view, and all this comes from the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, and then all the believing these things that exist don't, and things that are real aren't, becomes a wrong view. And then we have a quote from Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition that says, once there is a self, there is an idea of other. On behalf of self and other, there is attachment and hostility. So one becomes attached to what is about oneself and hostile towards what is other. All the faults come about in association with these. So once there is this idea of self, this reifying view of the perishing aggregates, then we can have other. And then all these labelings take place where we become attached and have aversion. So all faults come about. So all of these attachment, aversion, pride, all of these come about from this grasping at the I, mistaken grasping at I. Digsum, Selbuldu. So in Chenrezig's Introduction to the middle way, or entrance to the middle way, we find a quote that says, first there is establishment of self, then there is establishment of other. So that we find this in the commentary on the root wisdom text by Chenrezig, entrance to the middle way. The Leyukagi Rinpoche, not the Yure.
Nyomo but Maluba than G Talishon is. Nomonjan Maluji to Talishon, Louis Tonjute, Dan and D to Tushene, Nanju by Dan Gobashis. What they would send you to Baka to Yere.
So I'm going to look quickly in the 6th chapter. Rinpoche is saying in Chenrezig's entrance to the middle way, we find a quote that explains this. It says, an ordinary person. So it's something like the yogi correctly sees, instructed by their masters here. Hold on, we're getting there. So the yogis meditate on the yogis meditate on the absence of self. So from this idea of self, then other arises, and the yogis meditate upon absence of self. So we'll end there. I'll find it. I don't want to take up any more time. It's just the quote from this text. So I'll get it after, and let's do the concluding mandala offerings and dedication prayers. Okay, let's do this quote. Attachment to one's own belief, aversion towards other, all this is thought. Once clinging and aversion are dispelled through reason and analysis, we will be swiftly freed. Perceiving that all faults and all afflictions flow from the idea of the transitory composite, and knowing that its focus is the very self, this self is what the yogi will disapprove. This is the self that the yogis disapprove, because upon it, upon this view, which is the idea of the transitory composite, the self is created and then other. So that's the quote from the Chenrezig's commentary on the Middle Way. Perceiving that all faults and all afflictions flow from the idea of the transitory composite, and knowing that its focus is the very self, the self is what the yogi will disprove. So the yogi negates that self, negates the transitory collection, the view of the transitory collection. Okay, so the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lobsang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri Bhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Yatso, may stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts, with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche, Guti Shapi Deradan.